Today I will be presenting the first part of the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. In Daniel Kahneman's book, he states that in our brains we have two systems, System 1 and System 2. With System 1 in charge of fast and effortless thinking, System 2 being in charge of slow and calculated thinking. When I showed you this image, you can tell instantly that this person is angry and might say some very not nice things to you. You didn't intend to tell how the person is feeling or what they might be saying to you, but you did, and that is your system 1 in effect, creating a quick and effortless action without having any previous intent to do so. Now look at this. Immediately your system 1 could tell that you were looking at a multiplication problem, but you didn't know what the solution was instantly. But you could obviously tell that answer is definitely not 23 or 1237. But if I asked you how to solve the problem, your system 2 would then take charge and extract the previous information that you had from your memories on how to do multiplication, and it'll start holding in numbers, doing all the calculations, and keeping them all in your short-term memory. And then when it reaches the conclusion, it will discard all of the previous information and hold up its product of its effort, the solution to the problem, which is 299. Your System 1 is entirely automatic in its operations and will do many things without our intention to do so, such as understanding people talking in a language that you understand, or finding a solution to 2 plus 2. When you hear a loud sound, System 1 involuntarily shifts its attention to the sound, which in turn causes a voluntary attention shift for System 2, and your attention will stay on it for a bit, but easily can be redirected by focusing your attention on something else. When someone tells you to pay attention, it is a commonly used phrase to redirect someone's attention to the intended item. System 2 has a limited capacity to split its attention, and if its capacity is overexpended, you will definitely fail at what you're doing. An example of overextending your mental capacity is running across a rooftop while having a conversation. You've probably seen or heard about the video where two teams are passing a ball, and you're told to count how many times one or both teams pass the ball to each other. And in the middle of the video, a person just as a gorilla comes in, does something, and then leaves. During this, many people missed the gorilla the first time, while counting the number of times the balls were passed. But anyone who wasn't counting definitely saw the gorilla. This is an example of temporary blindness that is induced when we are focusing our mental energy on one thing that makes us blind to anything else that we normally would have seen. One thing about System 1 is it has no restraint against what it does. And this is where System 2 comes in, to stop System 1 from making mistakes like when talking to someone and you almost say something offensive to the person you're having a conversation with. And then you stop yourself midway from saying it, and you may just, correct yourself and maybe not say that offensive thing. That was System 2 taking action and correcting System 1 before you said it. The division of workload between your two systems is highly efficient, with System 1 doing a lot of the work really quickly, just like rapid firing the answers, and System 2 just like double checking it and then passing it back. Daniel Kahneman writes about a study he once did in which he studied the dilation of people's eyes. While doing a different task, he wrote how he discovered that when someone is doing a demanding task, one's pupil will dilate, and when a person ends the mental task, their pupils will then contract back to regular size. Daniel Kahneman also states that the more a person does a task, the less mental energy it demands, and the time to take it decreases as well. Walking. While walking is a relaxing task, it is a task that requires some mental effort to do, and while walking you can't exactly do many other tasks. An example is while walking with someone, and if you ask them a question like what's 7 times 78, they will almost immediately stop walking and try to figure it out if they do won't try to figure it out. Another example is when walking, if you take on an increased pace from what you normally do, you're both using the mental effort and self-control to maintain the speed and resist the urge to slow down. And if you try to do a mental task while walking at an increased pace, you'll find it extremely difficult to do, which proves that self-control and thought both come from System 2. Now that we know self-control and thought both come from System 2, multiple psychological studies have also proven that when someone is given a cognitive task and given a choice of two desserts, a chocolate cake or a salad, they will more than likely choose a chocolate cake, even if they're on like a really strict diet or something. This is because when you're doing a cognitive task, your system 2 is busy doing that, and since self-control also comes from system 2, it doesn't really have that much care to it, and just do whatever system 1, just can't do system 1 and tell you do whatever you want, and system 1, have no strength, choose chocolate cake, because that's what it wants. The same also is true when someone is sleep deprived or have something to impair their thought process, such as being under drugs or alcohol or something like that just blocks your thought process properly thinking, which makes you more likely to be violent or say offensive things, just have no self-control. In a psychological study, people were asked to suffer their emotions during a film that induced heavy emotions, and then after that they suffered ego depletion. After, when they were asked to do a physical activity, people who suffered an ego depletion were more likely to quit easier and early on due to ego depletion. Ego depletion causes people to quit more easily because the act of stilling their emotions requires emotional effort. And because of this, people are less likely to exert effort on physical activities because they both take up effort and drains the brain. Mental energy is typically thought of as simply being a metaphor, but mental energy is a real thing. This is proven when during an experiment it was discovered that the nervous system uses the most glucose in the body. And when demanding mental task is being enacted, the blood glucose levels in a person lowers because it all goes to the brain. A group did an experiment in which they caused ego depletion in volunteers, and after they induced ego depletion, the volunteers were told to drink lemonade, in which half of the group had lemonade that had sweetened with Splenda, which had no sugar in it, and then other half was sweetened with pure glucose. It was then observed that the group whose lemonade was sweetened with glucose, since they had sugar levels fixed, they did not suffer from ego depletion. But those who were sweetened with Splenda, they suffered from ego depletion because it did not provide any extra sugar. Our system 2 is fairly lazy, and when possible, take the easiest possible option. An example of this is when Daniel Kahneman and Shane Frederick showed many college students an argument that said, all roses are flowers, some flowers fade quickly, therefore some roses fade quickly. Many college students accept this as valid, but this argument is flawed because when it says some flowers fade quickly, if roses could not be part of this some flowers that are stated, so it's flawed. In this argument, System 1 creates a possible answer that it is valid because it seems valid at first glance. And since System 2 is lazy, it does not want to take the effort to actually look deeper into it because there's no pressure or anything to make it want to. And because of that, it will just accept System 1's answer and you will make the wrong answer. After saying these two words, you probably thought of a time you vomited. You might have seen a slight and quick expression of disgust when reading it, and you probably also, without a reason, pictured a scenario where the bananas caused someone to vomit. Because of this, you might avoid bananas for a bit, but you will also easily notice words related to bananas or vomit, such as sick, nausea, fruit, and yellow. This extra attentiveness to these types of words is known as priming. Priming is when you are exposed to the same type of auditory or visual stimuli, and after this, whatever you experience that is related to those, whatever you were stimulated with, well, you will be more likely to notice them or do something behavioral changes because of it. An example of priming is the Florida effect, which involves two stages of priming. The first stage is a set of words that primes the thoughts about old age, but never explicitly mentions the word old. The second stage is the result of the priming of thoughts about old age, which results in a behavior change, in which when the person walks, they will walk slower and might hunch their back, which is attributes associated with old age. All of this happens without the awareness of the person who is being primed. After the subject is questioned, they said they did not even notice a connection between the words in the first step or any behavior changes, and they insisted nothing they did was affected by the first step. From this, we can see that priming is not something we always consciously notice, but we can subconsciously notice it. And even though we don't notice it, it can still alter our behavior, the way we talk, or like some little things that still is surprising how it can change. Priming is not something simply induced by listening or saying something. It can also be induced by simple movements of the body. In an experiment, a group of people were asked to listen to messages through headphones, being told they were testing the audio equipment quality, and instructed to either move their head up and down or side to side. After this, people were questioned about their opinions on the messages they heard through their headphones. The people who shook their heads tended to disagree with the message, and those who nodded their heads tended to agree with the message. This shows that again they were not consciously aware of what they were doing and the effects it had, but the subconscious connection influenced their decisions to agree or disagree with the message. Have you ever learned about a new word or the definition of a word you were unsure of the direct meaning of, and after learning about it, you'll notice the word way more often? Like, like it's everywhere, you can't get away from it. Well, this is an example of an illusion of remembering, where because you had recently encountered a word in a way it stood out to you, you will be quick to notice it because you will process it better by like a couple milliseconds. But still, that small difference in processing makes it stand out a lot. And this is also quite similar to how priming works, since it stands out to you, but here it's a consciously you notice it, and with priming it's fairly usually unconscious. You have probably been told before that you should use more complicated language when writing, so people will think of what you write to be more credible and intelligent. While in certain situations, yeah, you should follow this, but typically people are more likely to think of something to be more intelligent and credible if you use simple language, as people might think that you might be trying to compensate for your lack of intelligence if you use too much intelligent words. Another way to sound more credible is if you write in rhymes, as people will be more likely to believe it if it sounds memorable. Finally, when quoting a source, try to use sources with easy to pronounce names, rather than names that are complicated, and it's been proven in a report where people were given these names of companies, and they tended to choose to support the one with the easiest to pronounce names, even though both companies were basically the exact same. Our emotions directly affect our thinking process by altering the amount of control each system has over us. When we are happy, we are more impulsive and gullible, which is because when we are happy, our connection with System 2 weakens, and System 1 has a much greater influence on our actions. Your reaction to an event has many variables. If you are a parent waiting for your child to come home when school ends, you'll be waiting in anticipation for a door open and hear a familiar voice, or you could be on vacation during the summer, and then on your vacation you run into someone you know. Your reaction to this will probably be like, along the lines of, "Oh wow, what are the chances of meeting you here?" And later on your vacation, you could be viewing a film. When it ends, you look to your side and see the same person you saw earlier, sitting next to you in the theater. You'll be surprised, but your level of surprise will be much lower compared to when you first saw them, because in your mind, after the first occurrence, the idea of them will be slightly altered in your memory. So making it the next time you see the modification, it will basically be like, oh look, this person is the person that shows up when I'm on vacation. Let me ask you a question. How many animals of each kind did Moses take onto the ark? I'm assuming you just answered two of each kind, and if you did, you would be incorrect. Well, yes, two of each kind of animal was taken onto the ark. It was not done by Moses, but by Noah. To those of you who are tricked by this, don't be disappointed in yourself, as there was a question a lot of people are tricked by, because at first, name does not seem out of place. Both names have the same cultural context, and also helps they have the same amount of syllables. But if I say change the name up for someone that's a bit more present and not at all in the same context, so like if I said, how many animals of each kind did Prisha take onto the ark, you would immediately know that something is wrong with that sentence and answer, she didn't take anything onto the ark. It was Noah. In 1944, Fritz Heider and Mary Ann Semel created a film which I will hopefully show you now. In this film, you probably imagine in your mind that the large triangle was bullying the small triangle, and the circle inside the house hid in fear, and after the large triangle was finished with the small triangle, it went in the house and bullied the circle, which was terrified. But Thankfully, the circle managed to escape, and with the help of Pilbo the small triangle, locked the big triangle in the house. After the big triangle breaks out of the house, it chases the little triangles and circle. In frustration and not being able to capture them, it destroys the house. But all this was just in your mind. Giving personality to inanimate objects, giving them thoughts, feelings, and just giving them anything of sentience, just not actually theoretical sentience, is how our System 1 works with trying to understand things better. That was my animation of part 1 of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Thank you for listening to my animation, and I shall end it here.